Right. Hello YouTube. This is part 2 of Number Translator. I'm Josh Feinstein and you're watching Code Everest. So if you're watching this video and you saw the part 1, there are a couple things I wanted to mention. One, I noticed that I said the word dumb and stupid, and this is dumb and that's stupid a bunch. My vocabulary is better than that, so I'm going to do better this time. I think I was a little bit nervous making my first video. Second thing, I made a comment about how in Japan they have a 10,000 number and that this number translator would be difficult to write in its current form in Japanese. And I was thinking about a fun conversation I had with somebody, and I didn't want to sound dismissive about saying that a 10,000 character is dumb. I actually studied anthropology. That was my major in college. So I'm keenly aware that I was displaying ethnocentrism, which is the belief that your upbringing and your culture is more valid than someone else's. And I did mention in the last video that everything makes sense when that's how you were raised, meaning that I think, of course, 500,000 is better than 50,000. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. I'm excited to do the second half of the video here. And just want to do a quick check on something on my computer. Yes, 10,000 is 500,000. That would have been a big mistake if I said that. All right, so let's get to part 2 of Number Translator. Oh, the other issue from the last video, I had my logo here in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and I'm guessing for part of the video it's hard to see what I was doing. So let's take a look through the code in case you haven't seen part 1. This is a translator that's going to take a number and a language, and it breaks it up, and it recursively figures out how to translate, let's say, 21 into the string 21. If it's 321, it'll say 321. I had an issue, though. I couldn't figure out how to pull in a language as a string and then translate that language into code because my object English is not a string. So if I try to do English, or like let's say my variable for my function I called language, if I tried to do language dot 10, I would get an error, of course. And I believe I figured out a way around it. That's the first thing that I want to do. So what I'm going to do, instead of making an English object and a Spanish object, I'm going to create an object called dictionary, and I'm going to make my nested objects my languages, and those keys for those key value pairs will be strings. Let's see if this works, because if it does, then I'll be able to do the multi-languages that I always intended to do. So for now, we're only going to have one language, English. Let me just make sure my syntax is okay. So you'll see dictionary dot English. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's find out. So the function number translator takes a number and a language. The default language is going to be English if you don't enter one. So I did a test before I started recording. You see here 955 is what's given out. If I change this to 4, then I'm going to get 900. Oh, I just broke my code. Well, let's see what we can do here. So if the number's less than 10, we should return dictionary. And then now, because it's a variable that's getting passed in as our language, this is going to be language. See here, language. And that should substitute the string English for this pair and then the number. So I only fixed it for less than 10. So let's do the number 9. And it works. So let's refactor the teens. This is dictionary bracket language. So I'm very happy that I solved this. I think it came to me in the shower, as most great ideas do. Where else? No, we've got... I probably should have used a find and replace. Let me speed this up a bit. It's there, English is here, and it's here. And then after I do this, I'm going to walk through the code again. One thing that I've noticed is that if I don't look at my code for a couple of days, probably a couple of hours, honestly, I don't remember what's doing what. And if you're not good with your notes, and if you're not good with your variable names, it can be really difficult to figure out what's going on, especially if you're looking at somebody else's code. So what is this function doing? It is first taking a number and a language. Now number as string, takes the number and then adds an empty string to it, so it converts it to a string. And then num would be number as string dot split. So we're making an array of our number, but as string characters of that number. Then we've got our dictionary here. I'm going to add Spanish to it in a bit. If the number is greater than 999, come back later. So we're basically up to 1,000. If it's less than 10, return dictionary with the given language with the given number. And this is my dictionary here. So if you put in 0, it's going to give you 0. If you put in 8, it's going to give you 8. I want to handle negatives also. So, or the number is less than 0. Still works. Okay, so if it's a teen, which means it's greater than 10, less than 20, because these are irregular words. Now, if it's less than 100, if the number is less than 100 and the second character of the number, as in 20, 30, or 40, is a 0, return that word, which we have here. Else, if it's less than 100 and the second character does not equal 0, then return dictionary, that language, at, so I'm using parse int to take the 2 and the 0, concatenate them, turn it into an integer, return the word 20, then give it an empty space, and then recursively call this function on the second character. So if it's 22, it's going to give me 20, and then it's going to run number translator on the 2, it's going to give me 22. Then the last thing I did in the last video was the same idea, but now for numbers that are less than 1,000. So now we're in the hundreds place. So if the second character and the third character are 0, so as in 400, 400, if those are all zeros, we know it's an even 100. So we're going to return dictionary at the given language, and then parsing the integer at the first character, which would be the 4. So now we've got 4 with an empty space and 100. Let's test that. 400. Ta-da! Now, if the number at the second character or the third character is not a 0, i.e. 401 or 410, we're going to return the dictionary at the given language with the integer of the first character, 4, plus an empty space plus the word 100, plus an empty space plus the word and, plus an empty space, and we're going to recursively call the second two characters concatenated. So 410 would be recalling number translator with the integer 10. So that's going to give us 4 space 100 space and space 10. Ta-da! So the biggest thing that I'm the most happy about is the fact that I am able to do multiple languages. That's what really, for me, makes this into a translator. So now if I do Spanish, I'm going to kick myself later if I spell any of these wrong. It has been a while since I've written Spanish. Let's do this. 8, 9, 10, 10 y 11. I really hope that's spelled properly. Wait, 11. I'm crazy. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's the first one with the DSC. Let me grab this. Really big on doing little keystrokes. If you know your key commands in any program you're doing, this was a big thing for audio engineering working in Pro Tools. You can really save a lot of time with typing. 20 is 20. 20. 40? 40. 40. Oh, this is gonna get crazy. Interesting. The word and, as in 410, is English. I'm gonna figure that out in a second. 40, 50. Oh my god, my mom's gonna kill me if I spelled this wrong. 60, 70, 80, 90. Oh my god, she'll kill me. Another problem in Spanish, 100 is not 100, it's 100. All right, I chose to make this project and I got to deal with it. So yeah, obviously, when you start getting into different languages, they all have different quirks and you have to account for them. So let's say, how do I want to handle this and situation? I could do dictionary. All right, I'm an English developer, so I'm going to solve this in an English sort of way. My code is going to say and the response I get when my code says and is going to be in Spanish. If you notice here, I did this interesting thing where my string key value pair keys, I used quotation marks, but then for my values I used single quotes. I don't think I've ever been shown that, but I like it. To me, it makes my code easier to read, so I'm going to stick with that. So here's our case where we have and. So now I'm going to do dictionary. Maybe this should be a variable. Oh no, wait. This is at the language. I guess I'll just do dot and. So whatever the and is for that language. I think this should work. Alright, so I'm going to do comma English. This is our first. Oh, what's the problem here? Unexpected token. 67, line 67. What did I do wrong? Got a nested object here. Do they want to see a comma here? So this bracket closes off this. This comma separates English from Spanish. This bracket here then would be the closing bracket here. What's the issue here? What did I do wrong? Oh, I put a comma here instead of a quote mark. And that and is black. I'm not used to REPL. English is not defined. Oh, English is not defined where? Line 101. Oh, right. You're going to be passing this function a string. Dictionary is spelled wrong. Here. This is my favorite kind of debugging where you just read the line. Oh, it's a typo. Easy. 410. All right, now let's try Spanish. 410. All right. Not exactly what we wanted here. Ah, because we got our hundreds problem, but the E is there. And then also I'm getting English for 10. Dictionary at language. So the language here should be Spanish. Did I not? Yes, it's here. Interesting. 400E10. So that's coming from here. That's coming from here. Ah, because all my recursive calls did not explicitly pass in the language. That's an interesting issue that I didn't foresee. Yeah, so I'm doing recursion, and because my function has a default language set to English, if you don't enter one, my recursive calls were being requested in English. So for all my recursive calls, I'm going to have to pass in my language variable. Now, if I had decided to not make English the default language, which actually is another instance of ethnocentrism, because I decided my American function should assume English, I would have gotten a different error, a more interesting error, an easier to debug error. Watch this. I'm going to remove what I just added. Oops. And you'll see. So if I run this, hopefully I didn't change too many things. Yeah, 410. So this is recursively calling it add a language. Now here it's going to tell me I didn't pass any language. Cannot read property 10 of undefined. At line 87 and at line 97. All these calls are trying to pass in a language, but they have no language to pass in. Luckily, I figured out my error rather easily. So let's see, where are all our recursive calls? Anytime I see number translator, I need to do comma language for recursion. All right, let's try now. y 10. 400 y 10. Now we're running into this 100 issue for our translator. 100 works. The first thing, all right, so that's the cool thing about Code Everest, I think, is that a lot of tutorial videos have probably, it looks like they've already created the functions that they're discussing, and it's really helpful to see that because you watch someone code it and you learn best practices and you can see good coding patterns. The cool thing about Code Everest is that as I trip up and make mistakes, you'll see things that are going to trip you up when you're making things, and you'll get to see maybe how my brain attacks problems as they come up. It might be different than the way your brain does it. And then you'll see ways that I might solve problems that make sense right away, but later you realize are messy and kind of ugly. And I'm about to do one right now. So I'm going to put in this comment here. It just says Spanish 100. This is the way my brain is like, oh yeah, you could fix this, do this. And I already don't like it. But, you know, until I come up with a better solution, maybe later, if I really were working on this at a job where it needed to be perfect, I might have an 8-hour workday where I can maybe over lunch talk to a coworker and say, hey, I did this, but I don't think it's great. What do you think? Or just think about it in the shower later. But for right now, I'm just going to do this. And maybe in the comments you can tell me if you think this is a good solution, suggest a better solution. Because coding in a bubble, while it can be fun and you might learn a lot, you can learn just as much by talking to other people. So Spanish 100, if number is 100 and language is Spanish. This is not elegant, but it will work. So this works in the case of 100 in Spanish. Or it should. Language is not defined. Language. I spelled language wrong. Where is it spelled wrong? One of the first things I used to do is I would see an error and I would go, where is it? Just read the error. Line 93. Language. Cien. All right, cool. So that works. If you notice, my dictionary doesn't have the number 100 in it. So 100 for English, 100 for Spanish, but here's where I get into an issue. 101 in English is fine, but in Spanish it's going to be dumb. Uno, 100, y uno. So, ciento. So in Spanish, 100 is cien, but if you're going to add to it, you would say ciento y uno, I believe. It's been a while. Please, Mom, don't get mad at me. I'm sorry. My older brother speaks better Spanish than me. I got the short end of the stick in bilingualism for Spanish, at least. All right, so, and now I'm in my English dictionary writing ciento, 100. So this is going to be 100, 100. Another thing, sometimes you need to slow down, make sure you don't mistype things. Because taking an extra 2 seconds to type something properly will save you maybe 5 hours of debugging something if you're really nested deep in some ugly code. All right, so this is cien for the Spanish language. So now, same way I changed my and to be, where is that? Dictionary.language.and. I'm going to do the same thing here for 100. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to do dictionary. Oops, I didn't copy it. Dictionary.language.and. Copy that. That's going to go in here where 100 was. And instead of and, it's going to be 100. Let's try it now. Uno, cien, y uno. Languages are tricky. For one thing, it's ciento. Also, I don't need it to say uno. So this is going to be more conditional logic that I'm not so happy with. And maybe you've heard of this. A lot of AI researchers happen to be white, so AI facial recognition happens to be better for white faces. Something I've heard a little bit about. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that the people who program this stuff are evil or like exclusionary, but what's happening to me with this function is a great example of what happens to programmers or anybody in any field, really. You take things for granted that you don't know you're taking for granted because you know what you know. And in my case, I'm an American person. I know English better than any other language. So my function that I wrote works really well in English. and now I want to make it work in another language, and I'm having trouble. If I were from Mexico or Colombia, like my family, this function would have started out working great in Spanish, and then if I tried to add English to it, I would have run into other problems. So here, for 200, 300, I need a certain way to do it. So actually for 201, I believe that's correct, 201. But the thing is, in Spanish, when it's 100 even, you would say, I just don't think people say uno ciento. You just say ciento. So now I need some kind of conditional to handle the 100s case in Spanish. And I'm not even sure if in Spanish the words are concatenated or not. I don't know if they're separate words. I believe it is. Yeah, and they become plural. Novecientos. It's not as easy as in English for me where I say 900. Is it doscientos? Is it one word? Yeah, it's one word. So this is an interesting thing. Because we're in Spanish, my entire hundreds case has to change. So now I'm considering, as the developer of this function, do I want to have a hundreds block that runs different code and have a conditional that says run this code if it's Spanish, run this code if it's English? Or do I want to handle individual cases depending on what's going on? I think because there's so many irregularities in the way that this works, I need cien for 100, I need ciento y uno for 101, but then for dos, I need it to be concatenated, dos cientos. In fact, I think I might need different words for all those different things. So, I mean, I know I can code this and get it to work. I was actually thinking of getting this to code up to the millions or even billions, but I think that as a first video, especially for Code Everest, I think this has been a success. I did some cool stuff with manipulating numbers and strings and vice versa, converting them. I did some cool stuff with array manipulation. I used recursion, objects, nested objects, using dot notation and bracket notation. And for me, I know that I can get this to work, and it's not really something that I need to work for any kind of project that I'm building. So I'm going to call it a day. My brother suggested that I try to recreate the Enigma machine in JavaScript. And that, to me, is a little bit more exciting than making sure that this thing can say 1,300,000 in Spanish or English. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed these videos about my number translator. Definitely fun project. Definitely a good first project for Code Everest. Thanks for watching. If you have any ideas for topics, other projects, or just constructive criticism about the channel, maybe the audio sounds funny, or maybe you're thinking I shouldn't always wear black because my background is black. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I only wear black. Have a nice day.